audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O's, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O's, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre, McGuire, and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche. And after 22 years,
sickest NHL podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And welcome to another edition of the Eye Test here on the Sick Podcast Network. He's Pierre McGuire. I'm Jimmy Murphy. And it was, of course, Pierre's Super Bowl weekend, a great Super Bowl, I thought, last night, but also tons of hockey going on and some big stories out of the NHL this past weekend, Pierre. And I think let's just get right into it. The thing that everyone's talking about right now, Morgan Rielly's reaction to Ridley Greig slap-shotting the puck into an empty net to seal the game in a 5-3 win for the Senators. You know, Rielly, in case anyone hasn't seen it yet, goes over, cross-checks him, and then all hell breaks loose. But let's go to the clip right now, and then we'll give our takes on it.
For Marner, slot to Morris. Dobie got a stick on that. It'll come to Matthews. Time running down. Nylander can't get it through. It'll be sent ahead, and Ridley Greig is going to put the finishing touches on an Ottawa win and series win, and Morgan Rielly takes exception to that. And the Battle of Ontario will boil over here.
A reaction you don't usually see from Morgan Rielly, but he's all over it. It's been a good game and a hard-fought third period, and I understand the response. For Greig, you don't need to be showing up like that, but the reaction, not a good one, and now they're still going. As Rielly was separated and sent in, they got another battle going on as Tavares is in the middle of it as well.
All right, Pierre. So we spoke about this on the phone earlier today, and we both agree, you know, we understand what Rielly is thinking in terms of, hey, don't show us up like that. But the reaction was just pretty over the top, right?
Well, there are a few things. Number one, everybody's saying Toronto's not tough enough to win in the playoffs, and they're not tough enough to go on a Stanley Cup run. Morgan Rielly's been there as long as anybody else that's wearing a Maple Leaf sweater right now. So he's the one that's been hearing this forever and ever and ever. So I can understand his frustration. For Ottawa, every game they play now is like the Stanley Cup playoffs because they're probably not going to be in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's been an unbelievably disappointing season for most of those players. So for a young player like Ridley Greig, Jimmy, who wants to prove a point to the fans, and there were more Toronto fans in that building than there were Ottawa fans, he's kind of making an emphasis on really, boom, take that.
Yep.
So he's a young guy. I worked in Ottawa when we had him. I went to Edmonton to watch him play. I know I told you this story. And Caden Gooley was playing for Edmonton. Jake Neighbors was playing for Edmonton. They're both in the NHL now. Ridley was playing in Brandon. And at the end of one game, I had to tell him, I said, listen, you're not a real big guy. I coached your father. Your father was a big guy. Your dad was a real strong guy, too.
Yeah, he
your
was.
dad, he could handle the rough going. You're not going to be able to do that in the NHL. So he's always been trying to prove people wrong. So I kind of understand where he's coming from, too, as a smaller guy trying to make it in the NHL. But what he did was not probably, if he has to look at it again, probably say, I'm not going to do that. And on the other side of it, I think that Morgan Rielly would say, if I had to do it over, I might do it a different way. But I kind of understand both sides of it. I do. And I'm not trying to shirk one side for the other or whatever. But, Jimmy, I got to tell you, when the cross-check makes contact to the head area, whether people like it or not, I got to think there's going to be a suspension involved here. It's not going to be a fine. There's going to be a suspension. And it's probably not going to be a tame one. It probably will not, just because of the stick making contact to the facial area.
Yeah, and then look, and now it's a hearing, so we know that he will be in New York. I found out, Pierre, it is in New York tomorrow. On Tuesday, he'll have his hearing with the NHL Department of Player Safety. So already we know it's more than 5 games, Pierre. But, you know, I'm kind of with you where I wonder with the culture now and the, you know, the direction we're going and being more cognizant of head injuries and CTE and all that, he's kind of left the Department of Player Safety and George Parros in a pickle there where, like, maybe they don't necessarily want to drop the hammer and go into double digits, but it could happen because they may look at it and say, well, this is our chance to kind of send a message league-wide. This is a statement-type suspension. It's going to be interesting. Now, he doesn't have a track record, Pierre. That will help him. But I I wonder if sort of just a perfect storm of everything is going to really hurt Morgan Rielly in this decision and on how many games he misses.
You've raised some really interesting points, Jimmy. Here's what I'll say, and I've said this ever since I got out of coaching. Sometimes good people do bad things.
Exactly.
Sometimes they do. And Morgan Rielly is a really good person. Talk to anybody on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Just talk to Morgan. You'll see what I'm talking about. He's a very good person, honorable man, very good player, important player for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But he was a good person that did a bad thing. On the other side of it, Ridley Gregg, I can understand the frustration of the Leaf players in particular. And this is something that I don't know how much is a play it's been getting, but it's important to say.
Okay.
They've been, according to most of the pundits, a lead pipe cinch to make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You would agree?
Yes.
It's not been that rosy for them. And I'm surprised most of the pundits haven't talked about how unrosy it has been.
Yeah.
It has not been good. This is they have the best scorer in the National Hockey League. And this is a team that's fighting tooth and nail to maintain a playoff position.
Yep. I mean,
so don't tell me how great the Toronto Maple Leafs are. Tell me how they're going to be better so that they can make the next step to make the playoffs and go deeper than what they did last year, winning for the first time in 6 years in the playoffs against a Tampa team that had been to the final 3 years in a row. Let's rest easy here. So I think part of the frustration for Morgan Rielly in that one, Jimmy, was the fact that this is a team that's teetering right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think as a leader of the team, he knows that.
Yeah.
And he was trying to make a statement saying, don't rub our face in it.
Yeah.
And I believe that's part of it as well.
Yep. I agree. And look, Pierre, I look at it right now, though. You lose that guy. He's so important in that team, not just skill-wise, but as you mentioned, and you so perfectly put, he's a heart and soul type guy. He's a leader on that team. To lose that at such a crucial time, like you said, I mean, let's look at the standings right now, Pierre. I mean, they're tied in points. Technically, they're ahead of the Detroit Red Wings in the top wildcard spot. They both have 60 points. But, we've been talking about goal differential and how important it is in looking at these standings right now. And, yeah, the Leafs are plus 14, but, Detroit's right back there with them at plus 16. By the way, Detroit's
do me one favor. As you read those stats, go look at what the Pittsburgh Penguins goal differential is. Tell me what it is. I can tell you. I know it off the top of my head.
It's only plus 13.
Yeah, it's one behind Toronto.
Yep.
And look at who's got games in hand.
Yep. Pittsburgh.
I'm just telling you. So this
is a tough time for this to happen.
Maybe it's a really tough time, but this is part of what irks me because a lot of the pundits don't report all this stuff.
No. And
it's important, critical information for fans to have a chance to digest.
Yes.
And again, if you look at the teams chasing to get into a wild card position or a division position, the only team that has a plus goal differential is Pittsburgh. They're plus 13, and they've just lost 3 in a row.
Yep.
I'm just telling you, and they have games in hand. They've got games in hand on Toronto.
It's no lock. It's not a lock.
It's far from a lock, and everybody, they're going to make it, and they're going to do that.
Yeah.
This thing that happened in Ottawa Saturday night, I think it's a reaction. One, because they were mad that Ridley Gregg did that, obviously.
Yeah.
But two, there's a frustration internally. They've lost the Battle of Ontario this year.
Yes.
They've lost to a team that's not going to make the playoffs in what should be an arduous series. They've lost to them.
Yeah. And Pierre,
series.
We spoke about it coming out of the All-Star break in the bye weeks. And, we were saying how some of these teams that had a lot of guys involved in it at the All-Star weekend and, dealing with all the parties and the events and all that could be distracted and still maybe need a little adjustment time. And I think they've become that prototypical team of what we were, previewing or predicting. This really hit them. And I'm not using that as an excuse or anything. I'm criticizing them saying that. Yeah. And so you look at it right now, Pierre, I mean, let's pull up their schedule because I'm really interested. And I don't want to. I'm not going to ask you to do it, Pierre, and I'm not going to speculate on anyone's job. I just am going to say I am worried for Sheldon Keefe. That's all I'll say. I look at their schedule right now, and okay. So now let's just assume you're going to be without Morgan Rielly for 10 games. All right, you've got a busy week coming up next week. So here we go. You got the Blues tomorrow, Flyers Thursday, and then the Ducks all at home on Saturday. They then go on a 4-game road trip here, and this is where it could get really interesting. This could be a big swing trip for them. They play at St. Louis on the 19th. St. Louis is no slouch. St. Louis is playing great hockey right now, Pierre.
They're playing to get in the playoffs. They're
not giving up.
Level. And if you watch Jordan Kyrou playing right now, you look at Robert Thomas playing right now, you look at Colton Parayko playing right now, you looked at Jordan Binnington at certain points of that game in Montreal the other day. He brought it. He was playing playoff hockey. So I'm just saying, St. Louis is far from being a blowaway. Like they're a hard team.
So then the second game of that trip, and it becomes the first of a back-to-back in the middle of that trip, is the Arizona Coyotes. Okay. Unless they get overconfident, they should be able to win that, you would think. But then it gets interesting, Pierre. February 22nd, the following night, they're in Vegas. Vegas is starting to pick it up again. They're playing like a Stanley Cup champion again. And then you go back, you go to Denver on the 24th, and you play the Colorado Avalanche. Pierre, they could essentially go 1-3 on that road trip, and that could be their season.
So you know what's crazy about this?
People in Toronto don't want to hear that, but that's the truth. That is the honest truth.
So I'll just tell you one other thing. You mentioned it, and I guarantee you, nobody in Toronto thought of this. If you were into almost Valentine's Day, and one of your key games going into that road trip was beating Philadelphia to be a playoff team in September, nobody, not one person in Toronto would have told you that might be a money game for us. That might be a game we got to win, because if we don't, we could be in big trouble. Right? Nobody, I guarantee you, was saying that.
So, Pierre, with that in mind, and with the fact, right, that they're not going to have Rielly, okay, if you're tree living right now, are you getting ahead of it right now and making a lot of calls? Because he's going to need a defenseman. I don't know who they got that they can bring up here. You would know better than me, but I mean, they're going to need somebody to come in and replace a little of what Rielly brings. And, you don't want to wait too long until you get back from that trip and you're out of it. Well, what's the point of making a trade then? If I'm him, I get ahead of it.
Yeah, no. So what I would tell you is, Jimmy, they don't have anybody, and I watch the Marlies play all the time. I've got one guy in that team that I work with in the summer I'm really proud of, who's done very well for them. But I would just say that they don't have anybody that can eat up the minutes from the Marlies that can replace Morgan Rielly's minutes.
Right.
Like they don't have it. They have guys that can come up and play. Yeah. But they have nobody that's going to eat Morgan Rielly's minutes at the same level. They don't. I think Brad at some point probably has acknowledged that or knows that, and is probably going to have to do something. Yeah. If this is longer than a 6-game suspension, Jimmy, this is going to be a problem. If they don't act on it, it's going to be a problem. And now I know they're saying they've got Joseph Wall back practicing, and there's a chance he'll be back. I know Joseph Wall is a good player. I watched him play at Boston College just like you watched him play at Boston College. I watched him play in the American League too. I watched him play in the World Junior for the Americans. We've all watched him. We know he's a good goalie, but he hasn't proven that he can win in the NHL playoffs. He hasn't been involved in a situation where it's a must-win for them to be a playoff team. He hasn't been involved in that yet. No. So we'll see how that goes. We'll just see how it goes. That's a big ask for that player at this point.
And a great call here, Randy Workman. Thanks for your due diligence on it. Randy points out, hey, don't sleep on that Coyotes game either. They're 0-3 in their last 3 games against Arizona.
No, I wouldn't sleep that well. I would not sleep on Arizona in Arizona anyways. They're hard to play against there. Yeah. Again, that building's not friendly to the visitors. It's a tough place to play. Yeah. Because it's a different environment. It's not what the guys are used to. It's just a different environment. Yeah. Ask the Pittsburgh Penguins. They went in there and they thought they were just going to run the roost over Arizona. They weren't able to do it. They just weren't able to do it.
Yep, and with the way first-round picks are being tossed around, Jeffrey B makes a great point there. Doesn't help. They only have a 2025 pick. So it's a tough spot. Like, no, I think they have a 2024 first. Okay. He's saying they don't want to give that up though, because they usually do. So they're in a tough spot here, and great on you. It's a good segue. You bring up Wall and the goaltending there. That's another thing that I was asking about off air. Like, do we start to see the dominoes fall in the goalie market starting maybe this week or next week? There's been a lot of whispers, chatter about the Calgary Flames and New Jersey Devils talking Jacob Markstrom, but nothing ever materialized. Some people out there in the media are reporting that it was the retention involved, that they needed Calgary to pick up more money. Who knows? Who knows what's going on there? I still don't see. I think that we said it and we agreed last week, Pierre. I don't see Markstrom, if he is getting traded, I see that more of a summertime draft day, draft weekend type deal. So there's other goalies out there, though. And Pierre, one guy I want to ask you about, and congratulations to him on playing his 1,000th game recently. And I know you know him well, and he's one of the best people to deal with in this game. He's a great ambassador for the game, and that's Marc-Andre Fleury. Do you think Billy Guerin is at the point where he might go to him and say, look, I could find you a spot where you contend? That being said, you look at the teams that supposedly need goalies right now, Pierre. So, all right, we said Jersey, Toronto, Colorado, and Edmonton. I think only 2 of 4. If I want to go to a team that's truly going to contend for the Stanley Cup, then I'm looking at Colorado, Edmonton, and I take out. I don't see Jersey. Who knows if Jersey even makes the playoffs? I mean, you could go there, and it still might not make a difference by the time he gets there. So I'm looking at Edmonton or Colorado, and man, I think when I really narrow it down on those two, I think Colorado would be a great fit for him.
No, it would be. You look, they signed Zach Parise. They're struggling right now. Let's be fair. Colorado coming out of the All-Star break hasn't done extremely well. Doesn't mean they're not going to get it back on the rails. Nathan McKinnon's just so darn good. What's going to happen with Gabriel Landeskog? Is it going to be just like what happened down in Tampa Bay, for their first Stanley Cup? So in terms of salary cap implications. So let's see what happens with Gabriel Landeskog. And obviously Mikko Rantanen's having a phenomenal year. Cale Makar's having a great year. Devon Toews having a good year. You look at their whole team. I think they need more from Ryan Johansson there in Colorado. And if they can't get more, then they've got to look for somebody else. Mm-hmm. Then the other part of it is, and I think this is really important, on defense, are they actually deep enough for a sustained run? I love the fact that Sam Malinsky's playing as well as he has. They brought up a kid they signed as an undrafted player out of Cornell University. He's done a fantastic job after doing a little tutorial work down in the American Hockey League. So, I look at it, I think they're a team, and I would cede to you that they're a team that's got a legitimate chance to win. I don't know if Edmonton has a legitimate chance to win or not. I just think there's too many variables there. They have not really shown that they can overcome a lot in tight games, but we'll see. We'll see long term. I still think that obviously McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, Zach Hyman, those guys have been phenomenal. Vander Kane had a hat trick the other night. I mean, there's so much to like, but there are teams that need goalies.
Yeah.
Well, where's Jake Allen going to go? Jake Allen.
And I think that's coming now. That's got to be starting to, get to the forefront there. I think Montreal knows now. You look at the way they played over the weekend and what happened there. They know that's it for this season. So I think that gets accelerated a bit. But Pierre, good point on Edmonton there too. As you said that, I thought about too. Well, look at the division they're in too, Pierre. They got to get by Vegas. They got to get by Vegas, which is good luck with that.
Vancouver? What about Vancouver?
Vancouver.
I watched Vancouver play this weekend. I watch all their games because I love, I don't love the coach, but I'm buddies with the coach. And I think I think the world of what they've done with their program. They've done a fantastic job.
Yeah.
But if you watch them play, so they lose a heartbreaking game in Detroit. Mm-hmm. They go into Washington. They battle. They do a good job. They get some offense from Connor Garland. They get some offense from depth guys who are hanging in there on defense.
Right.
They get a couple saves, a couple goal posts. Demko stands up when he has to, and they win the game off a tough turnover. They win the game on the road in a back-to-back. They could have mailed that game in on Super Bowl Sunday. That's a hard game to play in Washington, visitor. For all those years that I was at NBC, 16 of them, we had a Super Bowl Sunday game almost every Super Bowl Sunday in Washington.
I miss them. Yeah.
So, and then we had to be a hard off because we were going right to golf. You know what I mean? So, pretty well.
Yeah.
But those are hard games for the visitors to win down in Washington, and Vancouver won that game. And I don't know. Edmonton's got to go through them, and they've got to go through Vegas. And you know, hey, let's see what Jim Hiller and DJ Smith, my other buddy, do out in LA. And they've already won their first game as a coaching staff.
Yep.
Let's forget about them. I know they're on the road now. Let's see how it all plays out for them. But it's not easy. I just think it's the one thing I want to say, though, about Minnesota before we move on, because you brought up Marc-Andre.
Mm-hmm.
You could see the passion is still there for him in the game against Pittsburgh, Jimmy. He was so good at the game. At the end there, he was shucking and jiving all over the place. He was amazing in that game. That was vintage Marc-Andre Fleury. Not a style that's really easy to copy, just like Hasek wasn't easy to copy, but he found a way to get it done. I don't know how much people look at it, but the American Hockey League standings, Iowa, which is Minnesota's farm team, they're deep. They're not solidified as a playoff team yet, Jimmy. And they've got a goalie prospect there in Jesper Wallstad, who's really, really good. He's really good. He's eventually going to be the star. He's got one NHL start, I think, this year down in Dallas. It didn't go very well, but the team wasn't very good either for him. If they're going to make the playoffs there, and I think they do because of the young guys they have in their organization, he's got to stay there. So I don't know if they trade Fleury, like how they're going to deal with that internally too. Do you know what I mean? Because you can't bring Wallstad up. You got to try to make the playoffs in the American Hockey League. So it's it's a tough one. That's a tough one for Billy in Minnesota. That's a really tough one.
And before we leave Minnesota talk there too, by the way, congratulations to Billy Guerin, who we've had on this podcast, being named the general manager of Team USA for the Four Nations Face-Off and the 2026 Olympics, Pierre. So that'll be fun. I'm sure as we get into that and some off season, we'll talk about that more as we get close to it, but I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah, just looking around at other teams, let's go with Jersey right now. Okay. Because they're just such a fascinating team to me. And sadly, it's because they've underachieved. That's what's so fascinating to me about this team is that they just can't seem to get it going. And I know they've had injuries, but everybody's had injuries and they're not going to blame that either. So Pierre, you look at that team right now. And I mean, if you're another guy that we've had on this show, Tom Fitzgerald, and you're evaluating your team and you're looking at the standings and you're being realistic, do you really right now, do you go out and make those big trades or is it something you save for the off season?
Well, they're going to know. They play obviously the Stadium Series game on Saturday against Philadelphia.
Yep.
I think give them this week. They're going to know by the end of Saturday, I think, whether it's realistic for them or not to either try to be a buyer or to be a seller. And as we go through this week, I think we'll have a pretty good understanding. That Philadelphia game, obviously at MetLife Stadium is going to be huge. Even though it's a Stadium Series outdoor game, those points matter.
Oh,
it used to be. I did most of those outdoor games for a lot of years with Doc Emmerich and either John Davidson or Eddie Olczyk. And what's interesting is at the beginning they were kind of like exhibition games. Guys were going out there and playing. And then I think there was one year, it was in Wrigley Field. It was Chicago and Detroit.
I remember that.
And it got serious.
It got real serious.
It mattered in the standings. And those guys, the cups and everything else, and one team was taking the torch, the other one was passing the torch. Detroit was passing, Chicago was taking. And it got a whole lot of that. It got nasty, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of when it switched. Mm-hmm. Being an exhibition, kind of a fun thing, to a novel thing to, these points actually matter in the standings.
Yeah.
That's where I think people started to really get going with it.
And I love this one that they've got going, Pierre. I know it's not the Winter Classic. And I know people say, oh, enough, just do the Winter Classics, too many outdoor games now. Whatever, I don't mind it. As long as the players do what you're saying now that they care and they go out there. And Pierre, adding the fact, too, that that's a hockey area, I think, that we've said on this podcast numerous times that doesn't necessarily get enough attention as a great hockey area. The players know that. The teams know that. They're rivals, longtime rivals playing each other. This means something, not just in the standings. This is a pride type game for each team going in there. So that just has that built into it as well. I think we're going to get really 2 solid games. And it like you said, it's got huge playoff implications as well.
Well, look at Patty Roy is going to bring his team in there, play against the Rangers. So the question is, after, things went okay, then they kind of won 2. Well, they didn't kind of. They won 2 in a row coming out of the All-Star break. And then they lose to Calgary, and all of a sudden it's doom and gloom again, and everybody's worried. And who knows? I mean, they're chasing like everybody else. So it's not easy for Patty, so the Ranger Islander game is going to matter a lot too. There's no question that's going to matter, just like Jersey and Philly's going to matter. And I think when they designed this game, most people at the league thought Jersey's going to be in a good position, especially after last year in the playoffs when they knocked the Rangers out. So they're going to be, but Philly, new management, they're kind of going to be growing into it.
And it flip-flopped.
It's just totally turned. Yeah. And so the best laid plans don't always go the way you want them to. And then the other one was, I think a lot of people thought the Islanders roster would be a little bit slow and wouldn't transition as well, especially against a Ranger team that was going to be urgent, that had a lot of youthful enthusiasm and veteran experience, and a new coach. And so the Rangers haven't really disappointed. I think the Rangers have been pretty solid most of the year, and they deserve a lot of credit. I think Peter and Michael Peck in particular have done a really, really good job there. But for the Islanders, I mean, who knows? They're a little like New Jersey, Jimmy. They're going to know their lot in life probably in the next 10 days, whether they're going to be a buyer or they're going to be a seller.
Yep, it's going to be interesting. You mentioned in that description there of what's going on for the Stadium Series, you brought up the Calgary Flames, Pierre. And look, do I think they're making the playoffs? No. I'm going to come right out and say that. Yep. Do I think they're going on a run? No. But I want to give credit where it's due. And I really respect their coaching staff and the players for doing what we mentioned off the top of the show has proven to be a struggle for teams coming out of the break, especially for the teams that are already sort of cemented in the standings, like the team I'm covering right now. They have not been the same since they came back. Two out of 3 were complete stinkers. We could get to that later, but I want to give credit to them. I think it takes a lot considering the trades that have happened, all the turmoil and the question marks around their team, for them to come out and not just get wins, pure gutsy wins. Like I felt like those were some gutsy wins by the Flames. So credit to them. They should hold their heads high regardless of what happens at MSG tonight. It's been a great opening trip out of the break for them.
So they've lost 2 players in trades. They lost Zadorov, who was an important part of their team in the back end, and they also lost Elias Lindholm. Look at what's happened with their group. They've actually surged. I like Nazem Kadri's display about the Hyenas. That was actually really good. And then you got the Montreal Canadiens. They traded Sean Monahan. And you look at where they are because they know they're not making it. And you can see it in how they're playing. Whereas the other guys are like, we're going to be a stick in the mud. We're going to drive people nuts. We want it. We got pride.
Exactly.
And you know what? I really respect that. I'm so glad you brought that up. And Ryan Huska, who we talked about, I think, late last week, here's a guy that's been dying for an opportunity, and he gets it. And he's taking the most advantage of it that he can. And I really respect that a ton. I've walked in his shoes, and I really respect what he's doing. And he deserves a lot of credit there. We're all talking about Tocchet, and we're talking about all these other coaches, Tortorella, who's doing very well. And I just finished talking about Laviolette and Pekka in New York and how well they're doing. Montgomery in Boston, I think, has done a great job. Jimmy, forget the last few games. He's done a fantastic job. He really has. He really has.
Yeah.
But you look at what Ryan Huska's body of work has been this year, Jimmy. It's way under the radar. He deserves a lot more credit than what he's getting.
Yeah, he does. So kudos to them. And I'm tuning into that game a little. I'll go back and forth between the Beanpot. We'll close the show talking about the Beanpot because I know you want to get to that, and I do too, Pierre. But I just mentioned it. Let's talk about. I know I agree with you. Forget the last 2 games, the last 2 out of 3 for the Bruins. I don't put that on Montgomery, but there is something that's starting to worry me a bit about this team, Pierre. And I think, I don't know if worry is a word, or just something that struck me a bit. I've covered this team for a long time, and it's okay. And I've seen the Chara years leading into Bergeron, and I know how proud that organization is of the culture those guys set and maintained for so long through so much, while other teams had to reshuffle and do it over again. And, you know, with the salary cap and everything, I think it's amazing that they've been able to, you know, the consistent winning, but also the same culture within the dressing room. I'm going to tell you now, Pierre, this is the first time where I've seen maybe that culture, not that it's not there, but it's veering away from what it once was, and it's going to have to manifest into its own new culture, if that makes sense. Yeah. This is the first time where I've seen the transition is starting to happen in the culture, and it's showing. There's some leaks out there on the ice with just the way they're doing things that usually they're so prepared for, and not just prepared because they have a great coach in Jim Montgomery, but prepared because the players hold themselves so accountable. The players pay so much attention to detail. I don't see that attention right now. And maybe it's just the out of the break funk we've been talking about, but I've seen it a couple other times this year, Pierre. Think back to when they got smoked in Winnipeg, just laid a complete egg in a big game. And I think there was another one right after that. Or right before that, there were 2 games on Thanksgiving weekend. They lost. They got embarrassed by Detroit at home on Good Friday. And then they went down and got embarrassed by the Rangers on Saturday. Jim Montgomery mentioned that, and he said it's something he's aware. I wonder, Pierre, when you're a coach like that, or even a GM, and you've had something that's worked for so long, and maybe it's got to start to swerve a bit. How do you maintain the consistency while it transitions?
One of the best things the Bruins have
going for. So long-winded.
That was a great point. One of the great things the Bruins have going for it as an organization, they have Cam Neely as a president who's both tasted unbelievable success in Boston and really big, bitter disappointment. Mm-hmm. Donnie Sweeney is a general manager, unbelievable success and very major disappointment. He was part of both, same as Cam. So they know when the culture was good and they know when the culture is bad. They know. So your decision makers, that's important to have. Really important to have. Now you've got the ability to bring in Charlie McAvoy, to bring in Brad Marchand, to bring in Hampus Lindholm, to bring in Charlie Quell, because those are the 4 guys that I think drive the bus.
Yeah,
those are the 4 I think really. They're the guys you have to have totally on board. No disrespect meant to Pasta, by the way. I think Pasta is great, but I don't see him as being the leader of the team.
Yeah. I
see him being as the best scorer on the team and the best player on the team. But he's not the guy. Sometimes the best player isn't always the best leader.
Exactly.
And sometimes the best leader is not always the best player.
And I hate when they put a C on a guy just because he's the best player, Pierre. I know that we could go off on a tangent there. It drives me nuts.
But see, this is why I think Donnie and Cam can make a huge difference here, and they probably already have started to. It helps Jimmy Montgomery. They can be the stick in the mud. They can be the bad guys, and Jimmy can still be the guy that. So I think Boston will eventually figure it out. It will be interesting to see what they decide to do, going to the deadline, because Noah Hannifin's out there, and it's the great big thing that can make a huge difference for the Boston Bruins. But I don't know if they're prepared to pay that price, because clearly we're seeing the prices are already high.
Yeah, they're escalating.
Player like Hannifin, it's going to be even higher. So that's going to be interesting to watch.
Okay, so Pierre, but if you mentioned how they can be the bad guys, the GMs, right? If you're Don Sweeney, and I don't know if you saw Montgomery's press conference after the last game, where he said, "I don't have the answers right now. I don't know what to tell you." Is that bad? Like, he's just being honest, or should we read into that? Is there something bigger? Is there a layer behind him saying that?
I think he didn't want to say anything that was going to upset his group more.
Okay.
I think he knows how. What's that?
He's biting his tongue a bit.
Yeah. So sometimes when you get in that situation, the more you say, the worse it gets. Mm-hmm. Sometimes less is more.
Okay.
And there's the great Bowman line that he said to me so many times: even a fish wouldn't get caught if it kept its mouth shut. And so it does matter. It does, and especially with 24-hour newscasts and talk radio and everything else, you got to be really careful because the players still, they say they don't, but they all do. They all pay attention.
They read.
They know what's on Twitter. They know what's on Instagram. They know what's on talk radio. They know what's on national TV. They know what's on regional TV. They know. And if they don't, somebody's telling them. So sometimes less is more. And I think Jimmy actually handled himself really well. You're talking about after the Washington game, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I thought he was spot on. I thought he was good. He could have done some other stuff. I thought he handled it well.
Yeah. Well, that's why I come to you, because you've been in his shoes. Okay, we're going to get to questions in a bit here, Pierre. But let's just talk about the Beanpot. You're going to be heading over there very shortly. First game, BC Harvard there. Does Harvard have a shot in this one?
They do. I don't know what BC's going to decide to do in goal. I mean, if they play Fowler, then it becomes a bit of an issue. Harvard could have beat Northeastern in the first game. They're in the semifinal. There's no question they could have, but they weren't able to, and Northeastern's got this Beanpot. We had Jimmy Madigan on here a few weeks ago, and they've got this Beanpot mojo going. I talked to Jimmy late last week just to wish him good luck going into tonight, and I'll see him tonight over at TD Bank. But no, I think Harvard does have a chance now. Again, Boston College is a really good team, and they have arguably the best line in college hockey. And, whether it's Will Smith lighting it up, or whether it's Ryan Leonard lighting it up, or whether it's Gabe Perreault lighting it up, or whether it's Cutter Gauthier deeper in the line. I mean, they've got an array of riches, and they're not going to be easy to beat for anybody. But obviously, they play tonight, and the first game tonight doesn't matter as much.
Yeah. Remember, who was it last week? Was it Fusco? He's saying that's all I ever did was playing that stupid game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So Scotty Fusco said to Jimmy and I on the Sick podcast on the eye test, I never wanted to be in that first game on the second Monday, but I played in it every single time. So he was right.
Gosh. All right. Well, let's open it up, and the championship game goes well. So it's
a
great game.
It's going to be wild too. It's not just on the ice; it's going to be off the ice too. It's NU, Northeastern, it's BU, obviously Boston University. Not a whole lot of love there. The last time they played was at Matthews Arena. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
And there's a game that could have gone either way. There were 4,000 people at old Matthews Arena. And I talked to Jimmy about it. He says it was an amazingly intense environment for a regular season game. So tonight it'll just be amped up that much more. The one thing that could obviously make a difference is Macklin Celebrini for BU and Lane Hudson for BU. So if Northeastern wants to play a physical game, they have to make sure they don't take penalties, because if they do, I think the BU power play would be a huge problem for their penalty killing.
Good stuff. And by the way, I was up at the Girlfriends for Super Bowl, and her in-laws came over, and her brother-in-law watches the podcast now, and he says, man, I can't believe until I start watching you guys, I didn't know about Macklin Celebrini. He's like, this kid is unreal. I mean, he couldn't believe that he was 17. He's like, they got to be lying. And it's unreal. It's crazy how good he is.
You know what? When we had Nate,
get enough love.
We had Nate Neiman on the other day, though. I was really proud of Nate. And I've had a lot of people from Montreal actually text me saying that was really good with Nate Lehman.
That was a great interview.
College hockey's in a good place, and he is so spot on. Saturday night, I was in Troy, New York at RPI. At Houston Fieldhouse, I'm going to say it holds 6,500 people. Okay. Sold out. It was sold out. Awesome. The atmosphere was amazing. It ended up being a late goal by RPI to tie Colgate with 2 minutes to go in the game. They go into overtime, chances both ways, frenetic action, and then Colgate wins in a shootout. But not one person left the rink the whole game. It was like college hockey's in a good spot. But this is what I mean. We're talking about Celebrini. We need to celebrate Celebrini. Yes. And more people need to go watch this guy play, because the next time you see him, you're not going to be paying $30 to go to the game. You're going to be paying $130 to go watch him play.
Exactly.
That's how good this guy. He's really. So I know I've talked to him. Some other people have started to utilize the comparable, but he's Jonathan Taves with more goal scoring ability, pure goal scoring ability, and better feet. Doesn't mean he's a better player. Doesn't mean he's a better leader. Just those are the two characteristics that he has that are better than what Jonathan had.
Yeah.
It's when I talked about Austin Matthews and people got mad at me. I wasn't trying to run Ronnie Francis down. I coached Ronnie Francis. I was fortunate to win 2 Stanley Cups with the guy. All I was saying was Austin Matthews is a better pure goal scorer. This was when he was 16 years old. He's a better pure goal scorer. Doesn't mean he's a better player than Ronnie, and he was faster than Ronnie.
Yeah.
That's all.
That's it.
That's it.
You're just picking specific attributes of his game.
Look at Ronnie's been so well decorated. He's in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Austin's not there yet. We'll see if he gets there. But it's the same with Macklin. Jonathan Toews won 3 Stanley Cups. He won 2 Olympic gold medals. He won 2 World Junior gold medals.
Yeah.
The guy's pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
But there's every characteristic on players is different from player to player.
Exactly.
But just point it out. That's all. But Celebrini is the real deal, as you know, and so is Lane Hudson. Montreal fans better get excited. When Lane Hudson gets in, they're going to be ticked off at him because he's small and he can't play defense very well in his own zone. But they're going to love him when he's on the power play, and they're going to say, "Oh, our power plays at 24%, or our power plays at 26%." I wonder how that happened in 1 year.
Yes, exactly.
I'll tell you how it happened.
He's one of those things, right? We always say they're missing a big winger or a big center, but he's one of those things that they haven't had for a while, Pierre. They haven't had a guy like that on their power play in so long. I mean, Markov, we're going back to that.
Yeah, and even Markey, he was a good player, but he doesn't have the creativity of this guy.
No, not
now. One thing I'd say, Markov could really hammer the puck. Like, he could bring the heat. This guy doesn't bring the heat like that. This guy just makes everybody a threat. Yeah. He is, whomever you think the best point guard in the NBA is, and I don't know, I can't. This guy's that. Yeah. Whoever the best point guard is, that's what Lane is. He's that good. He really is.
I know. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in Montreal for many years to come. All right, let's go over to our question. Oh, by the way, Pierre, on campus with Nate Lehman, I felt bad. So he became the first coach, I figured it out, to come on and lose the game that night. We had been undefeated with our on-campus coaches until then. And it was a heartbreaker for him, too. 2-1 to Maine, a tough one.
But they came back the next night, Jimmy.
We didn't say on the show, I'd rather you win on Saturday. It's whoever wins on Saturday. That's what impresses me most.
He did say that. He says, hockey, says whoever wins on Saturday night.
Yes.
Okay. But the points still count on Friday. I was trying to be, and I will tell him this when I see him. Friday.
It's good stuff, though. Yeah, it's been good. So we're going to work on another guest for this Friday. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we've got it. Well, you want to just tell who we have coming in Thursday?
You can go. Go ahead, Pierre.
Oh, you go.
I already forgot. Grant Rielly, right? Rielly.
No, he's coming in Friday. For on campus Friday. Brett Rielly. He's going to be doing this.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. We have John Liu. Who is, I'm going to say, Pierre, and you know this, you know him longer than I have, probably one of the classiest guys I've met in this business. One of the nicest, most empathetic, I think would be the best word to describe John Liu. He's a quality guy. I'm looking forward to having him on. And he's in Winnipeg now, had been in Montreal for a while. So he said he's loving it there. He's back home. I'm looking forward to talking to him.
And one of the reasons why Jimmy and I wanted to have him on is because we want to talk about the relativity of the Winnipeg Jets.
Yes.
They're a real story.
Yeah.
They're a real story to compete. Now, they haven't played as well, going into the break and coming out of the break. But it doesn't matter. He's going to know. John is amazing boots on the ground reporter. He's a professional reporter. He's really good.
Old school.
I did, I don't even know how many World Juniors with Johnny working with us. But he was very, very good. I know I worked numerous Olympics with him and a lot of Montreal Canadiens playoff series with him. So he is a really good reporter, outstanding live reporter, really, really good. There's no stone left unturned when he's doing it. And then with Brett Rielly, we think, Jimmy and I both think, one of the best young coaches in the NCAA. He started the program at Wilkes College, and they've taken off like crazy. And then he went to LIU and started that program in Division I, and they're doing fantastically well. If you look at their record, maybe not that impressive, but look how tight their games have been against nationally ranked opponents. They came into BC and almost knocked them off. They lost 4-2 with an empty netter. They almost beat them. They went in Nebraska, Omaha. They lost 2 overtime games in Omaha. They're up in Alaska right now, which I think will be really cool. He'll be talking to us from Fairbanks, Alaska, when we do the show with him on Friday.
That'd be great. And you know what I like too, Pierre, like we were just talking earlier when we were talking about the stadium series, that's such a good hockey area. There's a lot of good players coming up, a lot of kids playing the game around there too. He's now going to be able to tap into that market. I know it's going to be tough at first to pull them away from some of the big boys, but the better they do, the more the word gets out. Hey, maybe mom and dad would rather have little Joey playing over here at LIU than heading all the way up to UMaine or something. Who knows? You never know.
You're right.
Doing a good job laying the foundation.
Yeah, no, it's such a good point. It's really good. So the other day, the Calgary Flames went into the building to practice before they played the Islanders. And we talked about Connor Zary, if you remember how well he was doing. And I said to you during the broadcast that his cousin is really a tremendous player playing for Brett Riley at LIU. When the Flames came in and used the locker room of LIU, Zary sat in his cousin's stall.
Oh, that's awesome.
Brett was telling me the story. He said, I sent him the podcast so he could hear it. And then his cousin must have heard it too. So his cousin said, make sure my bag and my stuff is in my cousin's stall. I want to change there. I think that's great. It's like, I love that stuff. That's part of the folklore of the eye test.
Yeah, for sure.
Special. It really matters. That stuff matters.
Yeah. So I look forward to that, Pierre. He's doing a great job there. Let's open it up right now to the comments section. We've got time for a few questions here.
Oh, yeah.
I know Randy's been there asking a lot. Evan, I want to tell Evan quickly, we've got that video, but we're waiting for our crew to get back from Vegas. When they're back, they're going to get it back up into the system, and we will address that question this week for sure. All right, let's go to the questions right now. What do we have? Randy Workman, can you ask if Uyghur deserves some votes for the Norris? Interesting.
Forget about the hat. You know what? I love what he said the other day. He talked about, hey, look, I've never had a hat trick in the NHL. I love the fact that his teammates are trying to help him get the hat trick against the Islanders and got it. McKenzie's always been a really good player. He's been a very overlooked player going back to his draft year. Kid from Ottawa that played out in the Quebec League, and he's done really, really well. That trade with Florida obviously hasn't been great, but if there's any redeeming quality of that trade, Mackenzie Weegar is that. Is he going to get votes for the Norris? I don't know. I don't know. It's because it's so broad-based. And there's, Hughes, the way Hughes is playing, the way McGuire's playing, I don't know. I just don't know.
Well, and it's a point that you make there, too, him being the real redeeming quality or attribute of that trade here, because I think when that trade was made, all eyes were on Huberdeau. And like you said, everybody was overlooking Weegar. I know guys in Florida, Pierre, like I've got friends that are high up there, and they were not happy about giving Weegar up. I mean, and I'm like, well, aren't you not like way more concerned about giving Huberdeau up? And they just said, no, like, Jimmy, this guy's legit. He's a great guy to have in the locker room. He's a great two-way D man. We didn't want to put him in that trade, but they, Calgary wanted him, and you can see why. Well,
they're not lying to you, because I'll tell you how I know that. We had significant interest in Ottawa.
There you go.
Mackenzie Weegar, and they wouldn't even talk to us. So
yeah,
I think they're telling you the truth.
Yeah, so that was a bigger part of that trade than a lot of people thought. All right, let's go to the next question. Jeffrey B, with Pitt 9 points out of a wild card spot, does this confirm Gensel will be traded in your mind? Doesn't confirm. I think it increases the likelihood, but I wouldn't say confirm yet.
No, but we talked about it earlier in the show, and I mean this. And Gordon Miller made a really good point last week when we had him on, when he said, look, they owe Malkin and Letang and Crosby at least an opportunity to stay whole, to try to make the playoffs and go on a run. Yeah. I'm not as convinced that they're going to be able to do that. But I think, they're going to know within the next 7 to 10 days, Pittsburgh, if they can't start to swing it in terms of winning with consistency, they're probably going to have to do something with Jake. They can't lose him for nothing. And I think we were the only people that talked about this. And Gordon, he's like, you're right. The comparable with Nylander in Toronto after he signed that contract, that's not going away.
No, it's not.
Jake's agent, no. And then we were, Jimmy and I, again, we're not being braggadocious. We're just calling it the way it was.
Yeah.
I brought it up to you right away, because that's the first thing. When you have a player like that, you got to look at who are the comparables. Like I remember when we did Kachuk's deal, we looked right at Svechnikov in Carolina. Like, that was the first one. Big, physical, robust, and he had signed a year previous.
Pierre,
so that's how you do it.
Yep, and I'm convinced. I think that something already would have gotten done with the Penguins and Gensel if not for that Nylander signing. That's the effect I think I have. If it didn't happen, I think by now we would have seen him go off the board and be locked up. But I agree with you. You called it from the start. That raised the value. That really threw a monkey wrench into the Penguins' plans, I think.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting because obviously Toronto lets Kyle Dubas go. He goes to Pittsburgh.
Right.
Now, one of his old players is kind of holding his feet to the fire because he's got to sign a guy that until last June, he didn't even probably had never talked to before.
Exactly.
That's going to – so do I think Jake's going to be traded right now? No, but I think within the next 7 to 10 days, if those 9 points go to 12 points out or if those 9 points go to 4 points out, it's two different paths. And – I think if it goes to 4 points, Jake stays. If it goes to 12 points, I think Jake leaves.
Yeah, and man, Edmonton keeps going in my head for him. I think it would be just such a good fit if it happens. We'll see.
I could think of one other one.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, you know who's really good at that stuff? Vegas is really good at that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Vegas is really good at that stuff. Yeah. I don't know how George McPhee and Kelly McCrimmon keep doing this stuff.
They're ruthless.
Good. They're
ruthless, Pierre. That's what they are.
I know that. You know, it's hard to believe. You say that with a smile on your face because it's the way they're really good guys. Like, they're really good.
Great guys.
Yeah. But they are ruthless.
And look, Pierre, I forget who it was that was he was part of the Misfits. It's going to come to me maybe off air, and I'll mention it tomorrow. But anyhow, there was a player that was part of the original team there. And as things started to go on, he realized that McPhee and McCrimmon were like this and that they're going to trade anyone, that they would trade their own mom or dad, like that they realized that these guys will do that. At first, like, wow, man, these guys they don't care. But then the players, the culture started to understand they just want to win. Don't take it personal. We're not trying to take away your best friend. We got to do what we have to do to win. And I think over time it became more understood what they were doing. They didn't take it as much as like, wow, this guy's been here forever. How can you move him?
I'll tell you when it really hit home on that side of it. If you remember Marc-Andre Fleury in the bubble in Edmonton, and they had gone out and made a trade to get another goalie, if you remember.
Yes.
And that goalie had injury issues, but he got to carry the ball, and Marc-Andre sat on the bench. And what I will tell you, which speaks volumes about the character of Marc-Andre Fleury, he was the best. I was standing right there. There was nobody else in the building, so I could hear everything. He was the most positive, supportive, proud teammate. I met him in the hotel lobby after some of the stuff came out. It was all online chatter. Yeah. And he goes, I'm going to support this team. I've been a big part of this team, and I love this place, and they've treated me great. I have nothing bad to say, and they handled it. And he did handle it really well. But then you saw what happened. He got moved.
Yeah.
They had to make a decision just recently. Do we keep Marchessault or do we keep Riley Smith? They kept Marchessault. They moved Riley Smith. Mm-hmm. You can look at it. James Neal at the beginning. Remember James Big Deal Neal?
Yeah.
They had him. He played pretty well there. Then he didn't.
We got to do what we got to do.
We have to do.
Yep.
And I just look at it. Like, I'm still shocked that Alex Pietrangelo is not still playing for the St. Louis Blues.
It's unreal.
I'm still baffled by it. No knock on anybody. I'm just surprised that that's especially coming off the cup as a captain. But then I look at what he's done in Vegas. I'm going, oh boy, they knew exactly what they were getting.
They knew what they were missing.
Alec Martinez. So they went out and got Alec Martinez from LA, 2 times cup winner. Guy that scored a deciding goal in a Stanley Cup final to win the cup, to clinch the cup.
Yep.
And they got him. Like, it's not always about the best player. Ivan Barbashev, okay? Let's use Ivan Barbashev. They knew Ivan Barbashev from the Quebec Major Junior League. They knew him a little bit from the NHL and the fact he was a 4th-line player playing in St. Louis. And what they realized is you can't always number players based on the teams they're coming from.
Yeah.
It's the character and the fit. So when Barbashev comes to Vegas and they win the cup, he's playing as a first and second line player there. He went from being a fourth line player in St. Louis to a first and second line player on a team that won the cup.
Yep.
You know, it shows you they're masterminds and they're really good at playing that game. And that's why I think I look at it and I say, maybe Jake Gensel.
Sneaky Vegas at it again. Yep.
You never know.
We'll see. We'll see. And I'm with you, Pierre. And hey, that goes like they know their team. They know what they need. They know what fits and what doesn't. And sometimes it isn't always the most popular move, but it works.
No,
all right, let's go to the next question.
Let's keep going. Yeah.
We'll do two more. Do you see the Lightning making?
We're good.
Okay. Do you see the Lightning making a move before the deadline? That's from Donovan Michaels.
I do.
Tomorrow.
I do think Tampa will make a move. They've always shown to make moves, especially because of the Sergachev injury. That's obviously very difficult. And I've talked to some of their people internally. I think they thought they'd be a little bit higher in the standings than where they are. But I think with the firepower that they have, the way Kucherov has played, the way the power play has been there, I think that they probably will. I think it would probably be more towards the defensive side of things than the offensive side of things, or maybe a depth for it. In their heyday, Jimmy, and you know this better than anybody.
Yes.
Whether it was Yanni Gord, whether it was Blake Coleman, whether, it was Patrick Maroon, whether it was Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, whether it was Barclay Goodrow. Those guys mattered on that team.
Huge.
And they've lost all those guys for zero because they couldn't afford them.
Yeah.
They didn't want to lose those guys. They didn't want to lose Yanni Gord to Seattle. They didn't want to lose Blake Coleman at Calgary. They didn't want to lose Barclay Goodrow to the Rangers. They didn't want to lose those guys.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't. But
and I think too, Pierre, Vasilevsky. I mean, no matter, I know that he hasn't had his best year, and obviously it took him a while to get back into it after his surgery, but he's a giant X factor. And if I've got him, as long as I've got Vasilevsky heading into a playoff round, then I'm doing all I can to, situate myself or present myself the best chance to win in the playoffs, because I know that if I can get the right mix in front of him, he's going to do the rest. And he's just that type of guy in the playoffs in a 7-game series. He's a complete X factor. So I'm with you. I think because of everything you said and also him, they're not – people think maybe they're going to kind of go into a rebuild or retool. Not yet. Not yet.
I don't think – no, I can't see that. I'd just be – not with Point, not with Cirelli, not with Kucherov. I know Stammer's got a contract thing they got to work out, but I think at some point cooler heads will prevail there. We'll see. They handled it the first time around. I got to think they're going to be able to handle it this time.
All right, let's go to the next question. Randy Workman. Jimmy, are you kind of worried about the center depth with the Bruins? Yes, and I think Don Sweeney is too. And Pierre and I have discussed this on here, and I think it's pretty evident when you hear that he was in on Lindholm, that he was, there were 3 teams, I guess, from what everyone's saying in it at the end, but he was that 4th that left right before it got really intense. That's what I've heard. And that to me tells me that he's not satisfied at the center position. You never can be, really, Pierre, because cup teams are built strong up the middle, and he knows that, and he knows that they need to improve that going forward.
Yeah, I thought the one thing that was tough was I thought Sean Monahan would have been a really good fit there.
Yes.
I thought Sean Monahan would have been a really good fit with the Rangers because of the Filipino situation. And Montreal traditionally does not make trades with, obviously, the Boston Bruins. So that kind of took one of their dance partners away, their potential players. And Elias Lindholm would have been right at the top for almost everybody. And, you look at what Vancouver paid for him. I can't see, Boston doing that at this point.
And they're hoping, hey, he hasn't signed an extension, so they're hoping
in the offseason when all it does is cost you money. It's all it doesn't cost you assets except for money.
Yeah. So Pierre, and the other thing I'll say too, that's a signal to me that they're not satisfied at center, and this is no knock on the player, because I think he's having a great year, and he's realizing the potential that the New Jersey Devils saw when they took him 6th overall in 2015. And that's how they're utilizing Pavel Zacher. Have you not noticed, Pierre, that whenever they have the chance, if the matchups fit, okay, they move him to the wing.
100%.
And it's happened more and more as the season has gone on, which tells me they're not sold on him being an everyday number 2 center at all.
No, I see that. The one, and we talked about this last week, I think, Jimmy. I still think there's good potential for Johnny Beecher. I'm not saying great. I think good.
Good.
And
Yeah.
the fact that he hasn't been available to play for Boston, I think, is something that would concern me a little. I don't think Fabian Lysel's a 3-4. If he's going to play, he's going to have to play as a 2. Just not that checking player that you need. So there is some room for internal growth for Boston when it comes to the center ice position.
Yeah. And then I think, too, and Pierre, look, we both agree. We've said it numerous times. Charlie Coyle, besides the goalies, is their MVP this year, I think, besides the goalies. But you have to still be realistic if you're Don Sweeney and say, okay, well, he's having a great year, a career season, but is he going to be able to do this year after year after year for the next few years? We'll see. But he needs to keep that idea that it's not a guarantee that he's the number 1 center. So,
Agreed.
All right, next question. Jeffrey B. Pierre, you've often compared Lane Hudson to Adam Fox. Do you see their skating being similar?
Well, Adam's a little bigger, Jeffrey. And so he's got a little bit of a longer stride. I think that Lane Hudson's quicker in tight areas than Adam. Adam's stronger in the puck when he pivots out of a puck possession play than Lane is. But it's at the top of the power play where they're really similar. Their peripheral vision for both of them is just exquisite. The ability to move the puck is overwhelming. They make the players around them better, and they make it easier for the forwards to play the game because the puck's always in a good position for them to handle it. In terms of the skating, I think Lane is quicker in confined areas. I think in a long race, Adam Fox would be quicker.
Awesome. Good stuff. All right, we'll do one more question here. What do we got? Relaxation music. I like the name. Should Montreal go after Martin Necas or Seth Jarvis?
I didn't know that either of them were available.
If they're available, yeah, hell yeah, go after them.
Yeah, they're RFAs. I wouldn't. Okay, so I get that part. No,
okay.
No, I'm not. I understand with the Kotkaniemi stuff. I get it. I totally get that part of it, dude. And I think you do too. But I just don't know. I don't
a little
think.
payback offer sheet. Is that what they're looking at?
So
we'll see.
I think there's some other ways Montreal can go,
Mm-hmm.
and I wouldn't be surprised to see them do that. But it's not for right now. I think it's for the summertime.
For sure. And quickly, too, Donovan Michaels suggested as a center out there, Tyler Johnson. Pierre, you had mentioned him to me when I was doing some writing, and I'm hearing his name a lot more now. We heard it here first, but I'm hearing a lot more out there now.
Ty's a good player. Just wish he was a little bit bigger, obviously, but he's a good player, and he's obviously got a lot of winning experience. I think that's well said, Jimmy, by you. Yep. He's got good winning experience, and he's a good teammate. It depends on your situation. If you're playing in the 3-4 hole for him, I don't know if that works for him. Just because of where he is in his career and then the size factor. They prefer those players to be a little bit bigger right now. Yeah. And we'd watched them, and we were texting back and forth yesterday, just again, for people to know. Nick Dowd, to me, just if you're good and you think you're going to win, you get him. Just go get him. He won't disappoint you. Just watch him kill penalties. Watch him take faceoffs. He scored a beautiful deflection goal on the backhand yesterday against Vancouver. I think we were the first. I think, Jimmy, you would know better than I, but we brought him up a long time ago, and
it's starting to gain steam, Pierre.
Now I was listening to the Vancouver broadcast yesterday, and they're talking about how valuable Nick Dowd is and what a great player it would be to acquire. And that's a really, by the way, for the local broadcast, John Shorthouse and Dave Tomlinson do a really great. They do a really, really good job on that Vancouver broadcast. They really do. Tomlinson, by the way, you talk about Beanpots. He was an elite player at Boston University. I watched him all the way from his first year to his last. Yeah. He was a really, really good player. Shorthouse has always been an elite broadcaster. That show is really, really good from Vancouver. Really,
he is. He's been great. I love what he's done in Vancouver there. Well, listen, always a pleasure, my friend, and thank you to everyone in the comments section and watching and listening, and thank you to Shane back in the production room in Montreal. And Pierre, we've got a great week ahead. I'm working on someone for tomorrow or Wednesday.
I know you're. I'm working on somebody. I'm working on somebody on Wednesday. I just need that phone number.
Yeah. We'll see what we can do. But we do have good guests later in the week, in John Lewin and Riley. So we're good. We're good. And another great weekend of hockey. I hope you all enjoyed it. It feels like now, Pierre, pretty much everyone's back from the break. So we're getting back into the rhythm again, the normal schedule.
I'll have a Beanpot update tomorrow. I'll have a Beanpot update for you tomorrow.
All right, Pierre, enjoy the games tonight. And I will talk to you tomorrow, my friend. This has been another edition of the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.